Welcome to A Call to Action, a series presented by Great Eastern Radio and Brattleboro Community Television. We're covering many different topics, from how our recovery will look to how we'll vote in the next election. Today we're talking with Susie Walker. She's the Executive Director at Turning Point, and today we'll be discussing addiction and recovery during a pandemic. I'm Peter Fish Case. Susie, welcome to A Call to Action.
Thanks so much for having me, Peter. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those who don't know, under normal circumstances, tell us what Turning Point does and some of the services they offer.
Sure. Turning Point is a peer recovery center for people in recovery from various addictions. And we include the family as people in recovery because families are so affected by all of the things that happen along with addiction. So we're a drop-in center where people can come and get peer supports. Mostly, we call it a community of hope because people can make connections with those who have lived experience and can tell them how they made the changes in their lives that led to healthier outcomes. So we have people who are trained recovery coaches and group facilitators. So it's a community, it's a drop-in center, but we also have programs like Smart Recovery and All Recovery and the recovery coaching that provide help for people that are trying to make connections to the various, that maybe they need to get connected to a treatment center, for instance, or a particular program. So we help with resource connection. But we also are somebody to cheerlead and confide in as people are making the changes. And they often have to change everything in their life. Some people just kind of go seamlessly from their problems into kind of resuming their life. And other people have a lot more rebuilding to do. So we're there to provide those supports.
Okay. All right. Now, one of the main things that Turning Point offers is that safe space.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And that safe space has basically been removed.
Yep.
So what happens to these folks who rely on coming to the actual physical plant that is Turning Point? I mean,
mm-hmm.
What happens to them when they can't get in?
Well, we had to make some, as we all did, a lot pretty quick changes to the way we were connecting with our people. So in the middle of March, we took our services remote. So we're providing telephone recovery supports for people who call in or who we now have on a list, and we call daily or every other day or weekly, whatever they request. We also are doing online groups every day at 1:00, so people can join there. And you've seen a lot of that, especially in this field where a lot of the in-person meetings are now online, where people can connect with those who they already know, like in real life, but they also are connecting with and hearing from people that they don't know. So I've heard from a lot of people that it's actually been quite beneficial in some ways, that it's they're hearing different viewpoints and seeing different ways of doing things, which is always a good thing too. So we've just done our best to keep connecting with people, but we know that not everybody can be reached that way remotely. So we're now, we haven't done any Project Care outreach since all this started. And we're looking to get that started in the next week or so. We're also looking, as we're slowly opening up, we want to be able to provide, safe supports at places like connecting with the folks who are staying at hotels now, or with our other partners that we usually connect with in a more direct way. So we're working that out right now. But when we do start outreach, we've got, the state has provided these bags that have Narcan, and we've got fentanyl test strips. There's a lot of information in there. We're including face masks because not everybody has access to getting those. So we're just adding some things to these bags that we usually take out with us in hopes that we're giving people the information they need. We'll also be prepared to talk about harm reduction. Isolation is a slippery slope for a lot of people in recovery, especially if they're in early recovery or struggling, it can lead to relapse because of the anxiety and the depression and just the general lack of connection that we're all struggling with right now. But it can also, shoot, I lost my train of thought, but the isolation in and of itself can be a bad thing. Excuse me. But for people who are still using, the isolation has that extra risk that if you have an overdose when you're on your own, there's nobody there to use Narcan with you.
Right.
If you are drinking and you fall or get injured, there isn't somebody there to help you. So we're talking about ways that harm reduction techniques that if you are going to be using, be honest and let somebody know so that the people in your circle can be aware and you make sure you're okay.
Right.
And so we're just doing the best we can right now to make those connections with people.
That's kind of all you can do at this point.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a quick aside, just kind of piggybacking off that question. Now, I've talked with some of the folks that take care of kids, and I've talked to like the Women's Freedom Center, and they have noticed a drop in calls for people needing those services, and the fear is that that's not a good thing. Because because these people aren't available to do that. Are you seeing any kind of a parallel with what's going on with the pandemic versus the services, or have you been able to kind of stay ahead of that?
We're probably seeing a drop off as well, because especially initially, people just didn't know that we were still there, that there were things still going on. So as they've become more aware of what we're doing, I think we're as connected as we can be. We do know that not everybody has the reliable phone or internet service or even the devices, but there have been a lot of organizations that have helped getting laptops in the hands of people who, for our Mothers in Recovery program, that they can participate from home if only they had the device. So, and the state just got a grant. So each of the recovery centers will get something like $25,000 specifically targeted to COVID responses. So if we need extra technology, if we need extra staff dedicated and to have extra training, we're trying to use that as well to leverage how we can be out in the community and connecting with folks a little bit better.
Oh, very good. All right, good. Yeah, I was just curious as I talk to folks who serve a specific segment of the population as you do, if you were experiencing these kind of decreased calls.
Can I tell you some good news? I talked to a couple of our coaches yesterday about the kinds of calls that we're getting and the kinds of just kind of what's going on in their daily work now. And it's been pretty amazing that the people who are asking for these calls are doing so because they're trying, their recovery is so precious, they're really trying hard to keep it, even in a time when they're really scared and they don't have access to the usual supports that they have. So our coaches are finding that they're on the phone a lot longer. Like our emergency department coaches do follow-up calls with people for the first 10 days of that program. Hello.
That's life in Zoom, man.
Yep, it is. But sometimes those calls are a 5 or 10 minute check-in. And during this time, those are sometimes now half an hour or more calls because people just don't have as many people to talk with right now. And so the coaches at the center, the coaches who work with emergency department patients, they're seeing that people are doing everything that they can to hold on to their recovery right now. And it's just very inspiring to see.
Yeah, no, that is great, which will kind of lead me to the next question about there've been a ton of surveys that have gone around that I've kind of dialed into about how much drinking is going on now that people are working from home. You know, people are just cracking a beer with lunch when they normally wouldn't.
Mhm.
And I assume, safe to assume that they're probably just asking people without an addiction problem. Um, how how much are you concerned
Oh,
about that for people with addiction problems? And like, are there any extra things that you have deployed that that can help people kind of get through this sort of a difficult time?
um, like people who have problems already who might be tempted in some way,
Yeah,
or
those people that have that have, like a for me to open up a beer in the middle of the day is just me opening up a beer in the
yeah,
middle of the day. I don't have
yep,
I'm not in recovery, so,
hmm,
but I mean, it's a stressful time, you know.
right.
I mean, so are you? How do you counsel someone through that who has an addiction problem to get through these days? What are the things that you're saying to them?
We're doing what we do all the time is we have people who have lived experience in recovery who can say, yeah, that used to be me. I used to be the person, whatever, drinking at work or before I went to work, and here's what I did to change that. And we also have people, as I said, who are just really trying to find the resources they can to stay, to hold on to the recovery because it's so precious to them. But I would say that what we're concerned about, Cassandra Holloway did a really nice story in the Commons last week. She interviewed, I think, 5 people who had a history of alcoholism or problematic drinking, and no longer do. And just to talk about the risks, because some of the people who are home alone drinking now may be people who have uh, they're on the cusp of social drinking and problematic drinking. And this pandemic and the lack of boredom, lack of work, anxiety, all of those things might actually lead people to be drinking more problematically. It might also lead to relapse for some people. So we're just trying to keep everybody aware that if you have people in your life that have had concerns previously or now, to stay in touch with them. I think that's the best thing we can all do, is to stay in touch with each other, and make the phone call or get on Zoom so you can just look in somebody's eye and hear their laughter and see how they're doing. So I think it's risky for a lot of us, and people who don't ordinarily drink a lot may, they might be at risk of falling, or anytime you're doing something like that alone, you're at risk, and it's a sad and painful thing to do on your own anyway. Like that, it's one thing for somebody who doesn't have a problem to crack a beer. Is quite another thing for somebody who thinks that, oh, just for today I can have a few.
Yeah.
So we're trying to do things just by talking about it and being available for people.
Right. I know that you circulated a flyer around. Let me get to that.
Hmm.
About and I assume that this is open for just for anyone, or is this just folks that are in recovery for the flyer that for the
It's for folks in recovery, but sometimes people are wondering. And so we certainly leave the door open for people to come and listen and participate. They may have questions about their own use, or they may be concerned about a family member or a friend. So by getting connected with us, sometimes people do get connected through one of the online meetings, and then they start receiving coach calls
Okay.
so that they can gather more information.
And that number is 802-257-5600.
Right.
Just so that we're clear. If you
Hmm.
feel as though you might need some help, then the
Hmm.
folks from Turning Point are there for you. Let's move forward to somebody who might be in recovery from drugs. Are they at a higher risk of? Well, I suppose everybody's at a risk if you get the coronavirus, but
Right.
is there a specific? Are they at a higher risk of being really infected by this?
Many of them can be if they've used opioids, for instance. A lot of people can have impaired respiratory systems, and they may be at risk health-wise, otherwise, because they're just not as strong and healthy. So we do want to keep we want to keep everybody safe from this awful thing, but there are people that have extra risks. And in fact, some of our own coaches are people that fall into some of those risk categories because of former use or age or whatever. So as we're figuring out ways to make sure our team is safe, then we can take that out in the community and model that for others. Yeah, and we're working a lot. I would mention too is, which in a lot of ways we're busier right now than we were before shutdown. And a lot of that is all the Zoom calls that we're all having. I get on a call almost every day with, we have a standing call with all the 12 recovery center directors. And we just have a call where we can, one, support each other. We've all had deaths in our community during shutdown. And we've had challenges with staffing during this time and just trying to resolve problems of how we connect with people. So all the 12 centers around the state are working together on this almost every day. And that's really inspiring, and we're learning a lot from each other that way. And we're also at this point of trying to, okay, we're going to be in this for a while. It's not the little temporary thing that we thought at first, maybe. So we're looking to get back to business in a more robust way now. For instance, last year, Turning Point did some trainings for the community, and we're going to start with one in June, self-care, compassion fatigue, which is secondary stress. And we're all suffering from that. It's something that happens in the caregiver world a lot because you're helping people that have very complicated and very painful situations. So we're going to be offering a compassion fatigue training to the community in June, and then something else in July. So we'll just be doing something every month. Yeah, so we're trying to do that. And then we're also resuming some other trainings, other work we're doing through the Windham County Consortium on Substance Use, the COSU that we call it. We've sort of been in a holding pattern with some of this work, but we're just going to start the trainings that we were planning for the rural areas. We're just going to be making arrangements to do those things remotely. So we're just going to keep moving ahead and training more people to be helpers so that we can get beyond Brattleboro as well. That's the work of COSU, to also get out into areas like Wilmington and Newfane and other parts of the county. So we need to keep training people to provide those supports, and that's what we're doing.
All right, well, that's great. That
Mm-hmm.
leads into another question that I had. Let's talk about the support that Turning Point as an organization who offers support. How can the community support Turning Point during these times? Are there ways to volunteer? Are there phone calls? How does that work? And do you even need it?
We might need some phone call support here in the near future. So it's always a good idea just to call and find out. We're also looking at our events, like I'm sure other organizations are. We're looking forward to our 3rd annual 5K, which is usually in September, that you helped us start the first year. Thank you so much. So we may not be able to do that in person. And I know Grace Cottage just had a virtual 5K. So maybe we'll do something like that. But there's still all the organizational and planning work that has to be done. We also last year did a storytelling event at the Latches called A Beautiful Journey. And it was 5 or 6 people's stories of recovery. So again, we're going to go through all the work that leading up to it involves working with a writing coach and crafting your story and getting some practice at delivering it. And so there's all that work that has to be done. We're going to do that and then record, 5 to 10 to 15 minute stories that we can post. And maybe we'll end up with a live event after that. But if not, that we've still done all the work of sharing our stories with the community anyway. So we'll need some writing coaches for that work. So we're just trying to think of everything that we had on our horizon and ways to keep doing it.
Okay. But anything like, are finances intact? Are you getting the grants that you need? Do you need folks to donate?
We're always looking for support from the community that way. We've got our grants and we've got some special COVID money. But if we, if we had some more financial support, we could. One thing I really want to do, thank you for asking, we got the special COVID money from the state, or we're about to, but it came with all kinds of limitations. So what I had originally written a proposal for, much of that is not allowed under the grant. What we know is that a lot of people don't have the connections or the devices to be able to participate in some of these remote supports. So our idea was to just buy some track phones that had these capabilities and provide them to people, and to have them come in ideally weekly to get some recovery coaching support, but then we could replenish the minutes on the phone so that they could keep participating. So we can use the money to buy staff equipment, but not participants.
Okay.
That's a limitation of the grant. So we are looking and writing, looking for grant proposals to write so that we can have some money to just be able to provide people phones, and to be able to have more tablets as we're going out in the community for outreach, where we could just sit down with somebody right then and there and do something for them. So we are doing a lot more. Doing things remotely means we need a lot more technology and equipment.
Okay. So, I mean, would it help for people to donate usable phones and tablets?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Yeah. Okay. So if you're watching or listening, then if you've got an old iPhone that is still can be hooked up to a network and is usable, connecting to Wi-Fi, or a tablet of the same, again, we'll put that number down in the description of this interview, and make sure to connect with you. Susie, is there anything else that we have left out here that you feel we need to cover?
Well, just keep an eye on your loved ones, and remember that we're out here. We're all over instead of just at the center. So, and I'm sure we're seeing a lot of benefits from the things that we're doing right now. So I think that even once we are able to get back to the center, we'll keep doing some of the remote supports, and especially the phone calling, because it fits around people's schedules in different ways, and
Right.
and they don't have to travel. And we're waiting the governor's next announcement that if we can be open in a limited way for one-on-one coaching supports, or for groups of less than 10 or something, we're going to just keep cautiously going forward and expanding. We're thinking that as the weather gets better, we've got this beautiful pergola out in our backyard. We could have meetings out there, and people could be outdoors where it's a little safer, and they could be, 6 feet apart or more,
Right.
and have a group together rather than entirely, online or by phone. So we'll keep exploring our options.
What's the best way that folks can get like those updates to find out if those things are happening? Do you?
Yeah, call the center, but also we post on Facebook all the time.
Okay.
About what's happening, and ask questions too, so people can post there as well if they have requests or message us.
All right. Very good. Susie, thanks for jumping on a call to action with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for doing all these calls. I learned so much from your various interviews. I appreciate it.
Thank you.